we are home. Yeah. So, some of you may know this. A little bit of sad news. Our Reverend Marjorie, her mother made a transition earlier this week. She was 95 years old. Absolute pistol. You may remember Marjorie telling a story about her mom. I actually was witness to this, where Mom had befriended a group of bikers at a restaurant bar, and before we know it, here's, she weighed about 80 pounds, right? And here she's being escorted out of the bar by these bikers because they're going to give her a ride on the Harley, right? And so literally, they pick her up, put her on the back of the Harley, put a helmet on her, and take her out on a ride on the Harley. This was 2 years ago. So, and I was there because it was the first time I ever met her, and I realized, what a remarkable woman she was. I was filled with admiration for her, and even though she had lived her entire life in the little town of Drumheller, Alberta, she still managed to live and love completely fully. So several of us were there for her memorial service yesterday and really got a sense of that. So this brings me to my talk today called Immortal Beloved, which I'm here to tell you is about death and immortality. Now, in case that freaks you out, don't go running out of the room screaming. I promise you that you are going to feel fulfilled, you're going to feel inspired, and you're going to feel that you have just been to service about life affirmation, because death and immortality in our teaching is the most life-affirming and joyful topics that I can talk about. That may seem kind of contradictory. How can something as sad as death be life-affirming and joyful? Well, here's the truth. People die. The truth is, you're going to die. I'm going to die. It just happens. When this physical form that we are inhabiting ceases to function, that's called death. It's called physical death. But what is also true is that God, spirit, life, whatever you want to call it, that's all there is. Everything is made out of that God substance, that God intelligence. It created everything out of itself. Everything is part of that, and God can't die. What is it that Einstein says? Energy can either be, that. And neither can we. We are made of that God energy. We cannot die. We may change form, but we don't die. Life is eternal. Therefore, that's true. The true us, our essence, our core, that divine spark that is in each and every one of us, is also eternal. It cannot be diminished. It cannot die. When the body is no longer able to sustain life as it is, it appears to die, but in reality, it's just changing form from one expression of life to another. In fact, in our teaching, we call it transition, not death. We are transitioning from one expression of life to another. And even in that transition, some things never change. Anybody who's ever owned a cat knows exactly what this is about, right? Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said this about immortality. He said, the body is a concrete manifestation existing for the purpose of furnishing a vehicle through which life expresses itself on this plane. It is that creation which, while it may have beginnings and ends, of itself neither begins nor ends. So our bodies, our vehicles, we have planned obsolescence. Forgive me for saying this, but we're like our toasters. Our toasters are not designed to live forever, right? After about 5 years, or our computers computers, they become obsolete. We go get new ones. The same thing is true for these physical bodies, these vehicles. And it's going to wear out, whether it's disease or whether it's accident or whether it's age. When they no longer function correctly, we leave them. But not our consciousness, not our spirit. Our consciousness lives on. Because it is our consciousness, our awareness, our soul that is connected to the all and everything, connected to the infinite. So I want you to think about this for a moment. When we're born into this life, we spend the next however many years we're going to be here, and we have experiences, and we touch lives, and our lives are touched, and we love, and we learn, and we gain wisdom. Does it make sense that when our body doesn't work anymore, that all of that wisdom, all of that love would just die with us? It doesn't make sense. We live in an intelligent universe, and that isn't intelligent. We don't gain wisdom to then just lose it. Our consciousness must carry on. One of the definitions of immortality is the literal survival of the individual human personality or consciousness for an indefinite period after physical death, with its memories and awareness of self-identity essentially intact. That's one of the definitions of immortality. You might look at it as like an upward spiral, that we learn our lessons here, and then when it's time to move on, we're released from our physical form for a little while, and we're allowed to move upward and onward and to our next experience of growth and of learning. Think of it kind of as a graduation. That when we pass, it is like we are graduating into the next level of life school, of our life curriculum. Here's what Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who is one of the experts on death and dying, she says, when we've done all the work we were sent to earth to do, we are allowed to shed our body, which imprisons our soul like a cocoon encloses the future butterfly. And when the time is right, we can let go of it, and we will be free of pain, free of fears and worries, free as a very beautiful butterfly returning home to God. Everybody go like this. Reverend Marjorie's mom, her name is Madge, was so full of life in her life as she lived her life, and 5 or 6 kids, and it just a beautiful life. It doesn't make sense that all of that life would just die with her because her body didn't work anymore. Her spirit lives on, it does. Because her spirit is the God within. It's immortal. Swami Vivekananda, who actually brought what we know as modern-day Hindu philosophy to the Western world. He came in the 1890s to an organization called the Parliament of World's Religions. And he was a Hindu Swami, and his teaching was so clear and it was so beautiful that people really were engaged by him, and it was kind of the birth of modern-day Hindu yoga philosophy here in the Western world. He said this: everything moves in a circle. A straight line, infinitely produced, becomes a circle. If that is the case, there cannot be eternal degeneration for any soul. Everything must complete the circle and come back to the source. And just because we believe that someone is immortal and that their spirit lives on doesn't mean that we don't miss them and aren't sad when they're gone. Of course we do. But we need to remember that our sadness is because of the loss in our lives, not in their lives. They've gone on. They've graduated, right? They're having a party at the next life, right? We're the ones that are having the sense of missing them. They're fine. So it's important to remember that this sadness that we feel is for ourselves and how we're missing that person in our lives. But the beautiful thing about immortality is that not only does the person's spirit live on after transition, they also live on in our memories of them. Because when someone has touched our lives, when we've loved someone, they become part of our memories. They become part of who we are. So they've achieved yet another kind of immortality. One of my favorite quotes about this is, "The wind casts seeds to scatter in the breeze. We plant seeds of love in other souls to bloom. Those who bloom in the hearts of others never die." That's why when someone makes their transition, we hold a memorial service to give people a chance to talk about the person and to share their memories. When I do memorial services, I have a whole section of the service for people to share their memories and their stories, because we want to celebrate that person's life and who they were and how they were with us. We want to remember them and how they shared their lives. There's a poem that I often use in memorial services to illustrate this. It's called "The Dash." Are you all familiar with it? You're going to hear it now. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on her tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noticed that first came the date of her birth, and spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time she spent alive on earth, and now those who loved her know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love, and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left. You could be at dash mid-range. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand what other people feel, and be less quick to anger, and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect, and more often wear a smile, remembering that that special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy's being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? Makes you think about the life you're living right now, doesn't it? How do you want your dash to be remembered? James Dean said, "Dream as if you'll live forever. Live as if you'll die today." And one way to guarantee to make your dash worthwhile is to live your life knowing and recognizing the God within. That spirit within, because the more awareness that we have of our oneness with God, the more fuller our life becomes. Haven't you experienced that? As you become more and more aware of how you are in life, how life is showing up for you, your oneness with God, hasn't your life gotten fuller? Yes, your dash becomes more enhanced when you understand that. Because when we're aware of God, we look around and we see the infinite in everything. Just like what Tracy read about today and Amy sang about earlier. The more we look around and we see the God in everything, the more we appreciate the preciousness of our time here together on this plane of existence. The more we can love, and I mean truly love, without judgment, without fear, without condemnation, truly love, the more lives we touch. And the more lives we touch, the fuller our gash becomes. And the fuller our gashes are, the more conscious we become of God. It's the cycle of life. It's the cycle of death. Is this making sense? Yeah. Woody Allen said, I don't want to achieve immortality through my work. I want to achieve immortality through not dying. Sorry, Woody. We're all going to die. We are. This forum is going to give out someday. It wasn't meant to live forever, but that is not the end of us. In fact, it could be the beginning. I want to close with one of my favorite parables about life and death. You may have heard it before. It was kind of floating around Facebook for a while recently, but it's just too good not to share. It's called the parable of the twins. Once upon a time, twin boys were conceived. Weeks passed, and the twins began to develop. As their awareness grew, they laughed for joy. Isn't it great that we were conceived? Isn't it great to be alive? Together, the twins explored their worlds. When they found their mother's cord that gave them life, they sang for joy. How great is our mother's love for us that she shares her own life with us. As the weeks stretched into months, the twins noticed how much the other was growing and changing. What does it mean, one asked. It means our stay in this world is drawing to an end, said the other. But I don't want to go, said one. I want to stay here always. We have no choice, said the other. But maybe there is life after birth. But how can there be, said one. We'll shed our life cord, and how will life be possible without it? Besides, we've seen evidence that there were others who were here before us, and none of them has returned to tell us that there is life after birth. No, this is the end. Maybe there is no mother after all. But there has to be, protested the other. How else did we get here? How do we remain alive? Have you ever seen our mother? Maybe she only lives in our minds. Maybe we made her up because the idea of her made us feel good. So the last days in the womb were filled with deep questioning and fear. And finally, the moment of birth arrived. And when the twins passed from their world, they opened their eyes and cried for joy. For what they saw exceeded their finest dreams. That is birth, and that is death. I don't know what happens when we die. I've probably been there before, but I don't remember. But I do know what I believe happens. I believe that what we think of as death could very well be birth into another wonderful experience. I believe that next experience is good because it's all God. And God is good. Thank you. That's so good. This is our day.